HOA, Karen beat my disabled girl half to death. Minutes later, SWAT police arrived. The sound of a scream tore through the calm suburban morning, a sound so raw, so heart-piercing, that even the birds scattered from the trees. By the time neighbors ran outside, they saw her, a little girl, barely 12, lying motionless on the sidewalk, her pink wheelchair flipped beside her. Blood dripped down the side of her face as her trembling hand reached out for help. And standing over her was Karen, the HOA president, in her royal blue shirt with golden trim, yelling at everyone not to come closer. "She deserved it," she shouted, her voice shaking with fury. "She broke our rules again. She was trespassing." Phones were out. Someone was recording. Another neighbor was calling 911. Then distant sirens. The sound grew louder, echoing between the neat row of houses, until flashing red and blue lights flooded the street. Karen froze. The crowd stepped back as SWAT police vehicles screeched to a stop. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. One shouted, "Put your hands where we can see them." Karen's arrogance vanished in an instant. Her hands shook as she whispered, "I didn't mean to hurt her." The girl's father arrived moments later, his world collapsing at the sight before him. His only child, the one he'd promised to protect, lying broken on the pavement. No one knew then that what happened next would shake the entire neighborhood and expose a secret no one was ready for. Hey, everyone, before we begin this heartbreaking story, I want to ask you something. Backhand index pointing right, which city are you watching from right now? Type it down below in the comments. I love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from across the country. And if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on all notifications, because every story I share here is inspired by real events, stories that remind us how fragile trust can be and how powerful justice truly is when the truth finally comes out. Now, this story isn't easy to hear. It's emotional. It's raw. And for every parent out there, it's your worst nightmare. Imagine this. Your child, already struggling to walk, already fighting battles most kids never have to face, becomes a target of cruelty in her own neighborhood. All because one woman, the so-called HOA Karen, decided that rules were more important than compassion. But here's what makes this story unforgettable. It doesn't end in silence. What started as one act of violence quickly turned into something much bigger. Within minutes, the situation spiraled out of control. And when the SWAT police arrived, the truth that followed would leave everyone stunned. So, take a deep breath. Stay with me till the end, because this story carries a message every family needs to hear about standing up to power, about love, and about the strength of a father who refused to let his daughter's pain go unanswered. All right, let's begin. Here's how it all started on what seemed like just another ordinary morning, until everything changed forever. It was a calm Saturday morning in Maplewood Heights, the kind of neighborhood where everything looked perfect from the outside. Freshly trimmed lawns, white fences lined up like soldiers, and those little HOA signs on every block that reminded people what they could and couldn't do. It was quiet, peaceful, and controlled. Too controlled. For Emma, a 12-year-old girl with a gentle smile and bright hazel eyes, it was just another morning of exploring the neighborhood garden. Her wheelchair wheels hummed softly on the concrete as she moved toward the row of marigolds she'd been helping plant the past week. Gardening was her happy place. The air smelled like wet soil and sunlight, and the way the wind brushed her hair made her forget for a moment that she was different. Her father, Michael, had always encouraged her to enjoy those little moments of freedom. "You've got the same right as anyone to smile, sweetheart," he'd say every morning before work. But today, things felt tense. The HOA meeting had been a week ago, and Karen, the association president, had been louder than ever about keeping standards high. People avoided her. Everyone knew her short temper. She wore her authority like a badge, blue polo with golden trim, clipboard always in hand, lips pursed tight like she was tasting something bitter. When Emma stopped near the tulips by the fountain, she reached out and began adjusting one of the garden signs that had fallen. It read, "HOA property, residents only." She smiled faintly. "Well, I Am a resident, she whispered to herself, fixing the sign's crooked angle. That's when the sharp sound of heels clacking against pavement broke her calm. Click, click, click. Karen. Excuse me. A voice snapped, slicing through the air. Emma turned, startled. Karen's eyes were narrowed, her clipboard pressed against her chest. What do you think you're doing? Emma blinked, unsure. I was just fixing the sign. It was falling over. Karen scoffed. You're touching HOA property again? How many times do I have to tell you kids? I'm not a kid, Emma said softly. I live here. My dad pays. Don't you dare talk back to me. Karen interrupted, stepping closer. You've been warned about rolling around the garden without permission. Those wheels ruin the soil. Emma's voice trembled. I stayed on the path. I didn't. Karen slammed the clipboard against the signpost, making Emma flinch. Do you think your special condition gives you special treatment? Rules are rules. A couple of neighbors glanced from their porches, uneasy but silent. They'd seen Karen like this before. Everyone had, but no one ever interfered. She always had some way of twisting things until the victim looked like the troublemaker. Emma looked down, her throat tightening. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll leave. Karen wasn't satisfied. Oh no, you won't. You'll learn this time. She stepped closer, towering over the trembling girl. You think sympathy protects you? This neighborhood runs on discipline. Emma tried backing up, but her wheelchair bumped against the edge of the sidewalk. The sudden stop startled her, and Karen's face twisted in anger. Don't you ignore me. Karen snatched the wheel of Emma's chair. The metal screeched. Stop, Emma cried, gripping her armrest. You're hurting me. Then stay off our property. Karen shouted, shaking the chair slightly. Her voice echoed off the houses. Karen, a man's voice yelled from across the street. Mr. Allen, an older resident. What are you doing? She's trespassing again. Karen barked back. I've told her father a dozen times. She's just a child. Allen shouted, but Karen ignored him. Neighbors began to peek out from their windows. Phones started to lift discreetly. A few people recorded as Karen kept shouting. Emma's voice broke, tears streaming down her cheeks. Please stop. I didn't do anything. Something inside Karen snapped, that ugly mix of anger and superiority boiling over. She grabbed the back of the wheelchair again, jerking it roughly toward the sidewalk edge. Stop. The chair tilted dangerously, one wheel lifting off the ground. Emma screamed as her small hands tried to steady herself, but the chair tipped over. The world flipped in slow motion, her body hitting the pavement, the hard crack of metal against concrete, and then silence. For a second, Karen froze. Her face went pale. The clipboard dropped from her hands, clattering beside the fallen sign. Oh my God, she muttered, stepping back. Emma lay still, a soft whimper escaping her lips as a small trickle of blood ran from her temple. The silence was deafening. Then someone screamed, "Call 911." The neighborhood erupted into chaos. Allen rushed over, his phone already in his hand. Two women from nearby houses knelt beside Emma, one holding her hand, the other checking her pulse. Karen backed away, her breath shallow. It was an accident. She moved. I didn't mean. Allen turned on her, furious. You attacked a disabled child. You're finished, Karen. I didn't. No, you don't understand. Karen's voice cracked, trembling between guilt and denial. She broke the rules. Rules, another neighbor shouted. She's bleeding. The sound of sirens began faintly in the distance, at first barely audible, then growing louder. Red and blue lights flashed over the rooftops. Karen turned toward her house, panic setting in. Her carefully built authority, the power she flaunted at every HOA meeting, was crumbling before her eyes. She tried to walk away, but neighbors surrounded her, blocking her path. You're not going anywhere, someone said. Stay right there. Her voice shook. You people don't know what she did. Allen cut her off sharply. What she did was exist, and you couldn't handle that. The air grew colder. Emma's father hadn't arrived yet, but everyone knew it wouldn't be long. And when he did, this peaceful little neighborhood would never look the same again. Karen looked around, her pulse racing, her mind replaying what had just happened. It was like waking from a nightmare she'd created herself, but it was too late to wake up. From across the street, someone whispered, "The police are bringing Swat back up." Karen blinked, confused. "Swat? For me?" But she had no idea the situation wasn't just an assault anymore. What she'd done had been caught on multiple cameras, shared to a local community app in real time. Within minutes, outrage was spreading online. The HOA queen had fallen, and this time there was no rulebook to save her. As the sirens grew louder, echoing down the perfectly maintained street, the neighbors stepped back. The flashing lights painted every white fence in red and blue. And through the chaos, one thought haunted everyone watching. If this could happen here, in a place that looked so perfect, what else was hiding behind those pretty fences? The flashing lights grew brighter as the first police cruiser turned the corner. Neighbors stood frozen in their driveways, clutching their phones, whispering under their breath. It was like a movie scene no one had ever wanted to see in real life. Karen stood at the center of it all, her face pale and trembling. Her royal blue HOA shirt, the symbol of her authority, was now stained with dirt and sweat. She tried to speak, to explain, but every word caught in her throat. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she muttered. Emma lay on the pavement, motionless except for the faint rise and fall of her chest. A neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, knelt beside her, holding a towel against her bleeding forehead. "Sweetheart, stay with me, okay?" she whispered, her own hand shaking. "The ambulance is on the way." Then the unmistakable sound of tires screeching. A black pickup truck swerved into the cul-de-sac, stopping just feet away from the crowd. The door flew open. "Emma!" It was Michael, her father. His face went from confusion to horror in a split second when he saw his daughter lying on the ground. He dropped to his knees beside her, his voice breaking as he whispered her name again and again. "Hey, baby daddy's here. I'm right here." Karen stepped back, trembling. She was trespassing, I didn't mean. Michael's head snapped toward her, eyes blazing with rage and disbelief. "Trespassing? She's 12. She can barely walk." And his voice cracked mid-sentence, the pain in his tone cutting deeper than any scream. "What did you do to her?" Karen lifted her hands defensively. "I didn't mean to hurt her. She fell." "She fell because you grabbed her," shouted Mr. Allen. "We all saw it." Karen looked around desperately, but all she saw were phones pointed at her. Recording, documenting, saving every second. The same neighbors who once feared her were now witnesses against her. "Sir, please step back." One officer called as 2 more vehicles arrived, but Michael didn't move. He was frozen beside his daughter, his trembling hands brushing dirt from her cheek. "She's my child," he whispered. "You can't ask me to step away." The officer's voice softened. "Sir, we understand. The medics are coming. Please give them room when they arrive." The sound of more sirens followed, an ambulance, then another. The street was now flooded with emergency vehicles. Karen stumbled backward as another officer approached her. "Ma'am, we need you to stay right there." She nodded faintly, her lips quivering. I didn't mean it. I was just trying to teach her." "Teach her?" Michael shouted, his voice echoing across the cul-de-sac. "You beat a disabled child. What lesson were you trying to teach?" The crowd murmured, anger simmering like wildfire. A woman from across the street yelled, "She's been bullying people for years. Someone finally needs to stop her." Karen's eyes darted from face to face, panic growing. "You don't understand the HOA rules." "Forget your rules," another man snapped. "You crossed a line that no rule can excuse." The ambulance doors swung open. 2 paramedics rushed out, kneeling beside Emma. They checked her pulse, gently lifted her head, and placed a collar around her neck before transferring her onto a stretcher. Michael tried to follow, but one medic held up a hand. "Sir, we'll take her to County General. Meet us there. She's stable, but we need to move fast." He hesitated, his heart torn between staying and confronting the woman who had done this. Then he stood, tears streaking his face, and turned to Karen. "You'll pay for this," he said quietly, his voice trembling not with anger anymore, but with a terrifying calm. "Every single thing you've done, every word, every threat, it ends today." Karen took another step back, shaking her head. "You can't talk to me like that. I'm the HOA prez." "Not anymore," said Officer Grant, stepping forward. "Turn around, ma'am. You're being detained for assault." Karen froze. No, this can't." He didn't argue. The officer took her wrists gently but firmly, pulling her arms behind her back. The sound of handcuffs clicking was followed by the sharp gasp of the watching crowd. Michael's jaw clenched as he watched her being led toward the patrol car, but before the officer could even open the door, another radio call came through, static, then a voice. "Unit 23, we've got a possible public disturbance escalating on Maplewood and 5th. Requesting tactical backup, possible threat escalation." Karen's eyes widened. "Tactical backup? For me?" The officer frowned, glancing toward the street. "What's going on now?" Moments later, a SWAT van appeared, armored black and roaring down the block. The neighborhood fell silent again. It wasn't just about Karen anymore. What no one realized yet was that one of the videos of the assault had already gone viral. Within 20 minutes, thousands of people were commenting, tagging local authorities, and calling for Karen's arrest. Protesters had begun gathering near the neighborhood entrance. Police were preparing for potential retaliation from angry residents. As the SWAT team stepped out, fully geared and alert, the weight of the situation hit everyone. Karen's voice cracked. This is a mistake. I didn't do anything wrong." "Tell that to the cameras," muttered Officer Grant. Michael watched in silence. His hands were trembling, but his expression was stone. He wasn't shouting anymore. He didn't need to. The entire world was already shouting for him. Karen was placed inside the squad car. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing like justice itself. The medics were gone. The SWAT officers surveyed the area to ensure calm, speaking briefly with neighbors who had witnessed the attack. As Michael stood under the flashing lights, the same street that once felt safe now looked alien. A crime scene instead of a community. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "All this over flower sign." Then he looked at the house across from him. Karen's house, with its perfect lawn, trimmed hedges, and spotless white porch. For the first time, it looked empty, soulless. A light breeze passed through, carrying the faint sound of Karen's muffled crying from inside the car. Michael closed his eyes. "You didn't just hurt my daughter," he said softly. "You broke this neighborhood." He turned away, walking toward his truck, the blue and red lights reflecting off his tear-streaked face. Behind him, Maplewood Heights was no longer the perfect neighborhood it pretended to be. It had become something else, a reminder that behind every spotless fence there could be something dark, something cruel, something that justice would eventually uncover. The cold, white lights of County General Hospital flickered faintly as the automatic doors slid open. The smell of disinfectant hit Michael instantly, sharp, sterile, and suffocating. He rushed in behind the stretcher, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. The paramedics called out her condition as they wheeled Emma through the hall. Female, age 12, head trauma, pulse stable but weak, probable concussion and bruised ribs. Michael could barely hear anything else. His entire focus was on the small hand that hung limply from the stretcher's edge. The same hand that once clutched his finger during bedtime stories was now cold and pale. They reached the trauma room, and the nurse stopped him at the door. "Sir, please wait outside. We'll take care of her." He nodded, frozen. The door shut in front of him, leaving him in a silence so heavy it felt alive. Through the small window, he saw doctors surrounding Emma, attaching monitors, speaking in fast, practiced tones. Michael slumped into one of the waiting chairs, hands covering his face. Every minute stretched into an hour. His mind played the scene over and over again. The overturned wheelchair, the blood, the look of pure terror on his daughter's face. He whispered under his breath, "Why her? Why my little girl?" Behind him, footsteps echoed. Officer Grant appeared, hat in hand. "Mr. Walker," he said gently, "we've arrested the woman responsible. She's being processed downtown." Michael didn't look up. "Good. I don't want her near my daughter ever again." Grant hesitated. "There's something else." Michael slowly raised his head. "What?" The officer sighed. "During the arrest, we ran her name through the system. Turns out this isn't the first time she's been reported for assault." Michael's jaw tightened. "You mean she's done this before?" Grant nodded. "Yes, sir. There were 2 previous complaints, both from younger residents in her last neighborhood. She was forced to resign from that HOA, then moved here, but the reports were buried, dismissed as neighborly disputes." Michael leaned forward, disbelief mixing with rage. "So, the system protected her?" "I'm afraid so," Grant said quietly. "But this time it's different. We have witnesses, video evidence, and your daughter's injuries. The DA's already aware. They're considering aggravated assault and possible hate crime charges." Michael exhaled shakily. For the first time since that morning, the word justice didn't feel so far away. Still, guilt ate at him. He whispered, "I should have been there." Grant shook his head. "You couldn't have known. She hid behind her authority. People like her always do, until they meet someone who stands up to them." Michael's eyes watered. "My daughter did. She didn't even yell back at her. She just stayed calm." The officer placed a hand on his shoulder. "She sounds strong, like her dad." Before Michael could respond, the trauma room door opened. Dr. Patel, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, stepped out. "Mr. Walker?" He jumped up. "How is she?" "She's stable," the doctor said, smiling softly. "She suffered a mild concussion and several bruises, but no internal bleeding. She'll need rest, but she's a fighter. You can see her now." The relief that flooded him was indescribable. His knees nearly gave out. "Thank God, thank you, doctor." He pushed open the door. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor filled the small room. Emma lay asleep, her face pale, but peaceful. A bandage crossed her forehead, and her arm was in a sling. Michael sat beside her, gently brushing her hair away from her eyes. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered. "You did nothing wrong, okay? You didn't deserve any of this." Her lips parted slightly, her voice faint. "Dad?" He leaned closer. "I'm right here, baby." "Did she get in trouble?" He swallowed hard. "Yeah, she's gone. You don't have to worry anymore." Emma blinked slowly. "Good, she was so mad. I didn't mean to." "You didn't," he said firmly, squeezing her hand. "You just tried to help." Tears filled his eyes again. "I'm proud of you, Emma. So proud." They sat in silence for a while, the kind that only exists between a father and daughter after fear has passed but love remains. Then outside the door, 2 reporters appeared with cameras and microphones, escorted by hospital security. One of them caught sight of Michael and spoke through the crack of the open door. "Mr. Walker, is it true your daughter was attacked by the HOA president? Do you plan to press charges?" Michael turned slowly toward them, his expression calm but intense. "You want a statement?" he said. "Here's one." He stood, his voice steady. "My daughter was attacked because someone believed rules were more important than humanity. Because compassion doesn't fit in some people's definition of order. And if anyone thinks they can hurt a child and hide behind power, they'll learn today that justice isn't optional." The cameras clicked. His words would be replayed across local news within the hour. Behind him, Emma stirred again. "Dad?" He turned back, smiling faintly. "Yeah, sweetheart. Can we still plant flowers when I get better?" That single question shattered him all over again. He nodded quickly, wiping his eyes. "Of course. You and me will plant an entire garden, okay? No one's ever going to take that from you again." Outside the window, the faint red glow of police lights still reflected against the hospital glass. Somewhere downtown, Karen sat in a holding cell, still trying to convince herself she was the victim. But this time, the world had seen everything, and for once, everyone knew exactly who the real villain was. The next morning, the world outside County General was no longer the same. By sunrise, the story had exploded across social media. The video of Karen standing over Emma, shouting, her hand gripping the wheelchair, had gone viral overnight. Millions had seen it. Thousands had shared it with the same caption. HOA, President Beats Disabled Girl Over Garden Sign. The perfect neighborhood of Maplewood Heights was now a national headline. News vans lined the entrance, camera crews battling for space, drones hovering above the cul-de-sac where it all happened. Inside the county police station, Karen sat at a cold metal table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her royal blue HOA shirt was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The golden trim she'd once worn proudly was now just a memory. Her face was pale, her hair messy, her voice low. She looked nothing like the woman who once barked orders at residents about lawn heights and parking violations. Across the table sat Detective Harris, a seasoned investigator with tired eyes and a calm voice. A small recorder blinked red on the table between them. "Let's start again," Harris said evenly. "In your own words, tell me what happened yesterday morning." Karen stared at the table. "It was a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" "Yes," she whispered. "That girl, she was touching the sign. It's HOA property. I just wanted her to stop." The detective leaned forward. "So, you thought it was appropriate to physically grab her wheelchair?" Karen flinched. "I didn't grab it. I just tried to move it." He pressed a button on the tablet beside him, and the sound of her voice filled the room. "You think your special condition gives you special treatment?" Karen's head dropped. "Is that your voice, Ms. Walker?" "Yes." "Do you hear the tone in it? The anger?" Harris asked quietly. "You've had previous complaints, 2 reports of similar behavior in your last neighborhood. Do you remember those?" Her lips tightened. "Those were lies. People exaggerate things when they don't like rules." He nodded slowly. "Rules. You seem to like that word." He paused. "But tell me, where in your rule book does it say it's acceptable to harm a child?" Karen's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I wanted her to respect order. Everything falls apart when people stop following the rules." The detective's tone softened, but his eyes didn't. "You sound like someone who's lost control, not someone maintaining it." Karen buried her face in her hands. "They all hated me. Every one of them. Always whispering, always mocking me. I just wanted peace." Harris let the silence linger. "You didn't want peace. You wanted power. And when someone didn't obey, you punished them." Karen's hands trembled. "You don't understand. I've kept that community perfect for years." "Perfect?" Harris interrupted sharply. "There's a 12-year-old girl lying in a hospital bed right now because of your idea of perfect." Karen looked up, her voice breaking. Is she going to be okay?" "Yes," the detective replied. "She's alive. And she's talking." Karen's eyes widened. She's talking?" He nodded slowly. "She remembers everything. Every word you said. Every action you took." Her face drained of color. The detective turned off the recorder. "You'll be facing multiple charges, Ms. Walker: assault, harassment, abuse of authority, and possibly a hate-motivated offense. You'll have your day in court." He stood up and knocked on the door. "Take her back." 2 officers entered. As they led her out, Karen glanced up at the observation window, where Michael stood, watching silently. Their eyes met for a moment. His expression was unreadable, but the pain behind it was unmistakable. She stopped walking. "Please," she said softly, "tell her I'm sorry." Michael didn't answer. He simply turned and walked away. Outside the station, cameras flashed as he stepped into the morning light. Reporters swarmed him immediately. "Mr. Walker, how's your daughter doing? Will you press full charges? Do you forgive the woman who did this?" He paused, surrounded by microphones. He took a deep breath and said, "My daughter's stronger than any of us realized. And forgiveness, that's between her and God. But justice, that's between her and the law. And I'll make sure she gets it." The crowd of reporters fell silent. His voice carried something deeper than anger, conviction. Later that evening, Michael sat beside Emma's hospital bed again. She was awake now, her small hand resting in his. The TV across the room showed the same story playing on the local news, Karen's mugshot, the viral video, the interviews. Emma turned her head slightly. "Dad, everyone's talking about it." "I know," he said softly, "but you don't need to worry about that, okay? All that matters is you getting better." She hesitated. "I'm not scared anymore." He looked at her, surprised. "You're not?" "No, because she's not in charge anymore." Michael's throat tightened. He nodded slowly. "No, sweetheart, she's not." Emma gave a tiny smile, the corners of her lips trembling. "Then can we move? Somewhere with no HOA?" He laughed through his tears. "You got it." She giggled faintly, and for the first time in 2 days, the sound brought warmth back to his heart. As the evening sunlight poured into the room, painting the walls gold, Michael looked at his daughter, fragile but fearless, and realized something profound. Sometimes it takes the worst kind of cruelty to reveal the best kind of strength. Down at the police station, Karen sat alone in her cell. No clipboard, no neighbors, no authority. Just silence. For the first time, she saw herself clearly, not as the enforcer of order, but as the destroyer of peace. And as the world outside demanded justice, she finally whispered the words she should have said the moment it all began. "I was wrong." But this time, no one was there to listen. 3 weeks later, the sky above the county courthouse was gray and heavy, as though even the clouds carried the weight of what was about to happen. The courthouse steps were lined with people, neighbors, reporters, even strangers holding signs that read, "Justice for Emma. No excuse for abuse." Michael walked through the crowd slowly, his hand resting gently on his daughter's wheelchair. Emma wore a pale yellow dress, and a small white bandage still peeked from under her hairline. The crowd quieted as they passed. Cameras flashed, but all Emma did was smile softly, a brave, innocent smile that somehow calmed everyone around her. Inside the courthouse, Karen sat at the defendant's table, her head bowed. The orange jumpsuit was gone, replaced by a gray suit that seemed too big for her, as if it belonged to someone stronger. Her eyes were sunken. The woman who once controlled an entire neighborhood now looked like a shadow of herself. The courtroom buzzed with quiet conversation until the bailiff called. "All rise." The judge entered, stern, composed, and clearly aware of the attention this case had drawn. "You may be seated." As the trial began, the prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not about a garden sign. It's about power, misused, abused, and weaponized against the most vulnerable among us." Karen flinched. Michael held Emma's hand. She squeezed it gently, whispering, "It's okay, Dad." The prosecutor continued, projecting images on the screen. Photos of the garden, the overturned wheelchair, and the viral video that had shattered Maplewood's reputation for good. "This video was recorded by multiple witnesses," she said. "The defendant, Ms. Karen Hill, is clearly seen shouting, grabbing, and tipping the victim's wheelchair. The assault was not an accident. It was an act of anger fueled by arrogance." Karen's lawyer rose, his voice measured but uncertain. "Your Honor, my client did not intend to cause harm. She acted impulsively, poorly, yes, but without malice. She has expressed deep remorse." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Remorse doesn't erase accountability. Counselor, proceed carefully." Then came the moment everyone waited for. Michael took the stand. He adjusted the microphone, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "My daughter, she's the light of my life. She was born with a disability, but she never let it stop her. Every day she wakes up smiling. Every day she chooses kindness. And that woman," he pointed toward Karen without even looking at her, "tried to take that from her." He paused, swallowing hard. "I watched the video once. Just once. That was enough. Because no parent should have to see their child hurt by hate disguised as authority." The courtroom fell silent. Karen's lawyer attempted to speak, but his voice faltered when he saw the jury, some wiping away tears, others glaring at his client. Then, to everyone's surprise, the defense called Karen herself to testify. She stood, shaky but determined, As she took the oath, her voice trembled. "I swear to tell the truth." The lawyer asked gently, "Ms. Hill, what do you have to say for yourself?" Karen looked at the jury, then at Emma, small, fragile, but brave beyond words. Her lips quivered. "I was wrong," she began. "I let my need for control turn into cruelty. I thought I was protecting my neighborhood, but really, I was protecting my pride." Her eyes welled up. "Every day, I looked for someone to blame, for noise, for mess, for things I couldn't control in my own life. And that day, it was her. I can't take back what I did, but I'll live with it forever." Michael's jaw tightened. He didn't trust her words, but for the first time, they didn't matter, not to him, not to anyone. When the judge called for recess, the tension hung thick. Outside the courtroom, news reporters surrounded the steps, broadcasting every development live. Inside, Emma turned to her father. "Dad," she whispered, "why do people hurt others when they don't even know them?" Michael knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because some people confuse fear with strength, sweetheart. But real strength comes from forgiveness and standing back up." Emma nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. Moments later, the judge returned with the jury. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" A juror stood. "We have, Your Honor." "On the charge of aggravated assault, how do you find the defendant?" "Guilty." Karen's knees nearly gave out. She closed her eyes as tears rolled down her cheeks. The judge continued, "On the charge of harassment and abuse of authority?" "Guilty." The judge's gavel struck once. "Ms. Hill, your actions were a grave abuse of power and humanity. You are hereby sentenced to 3 years in state custody, community service upon release, and mandatory rehabilitation counseling. This court is adjourned." The gavel fell again. Karen collapsed into her chair, sobbing quietly. She wasn't shouting anymore. There were no rules left to enforce. Emma looked at her from across the room, not with hate, but with something deeper. Pity. As the bailiff led Karen away, their eyes met one final time. Emma whispered, "I forgive you." Karen froze. Her lips parted, but no words came. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. Outside, the air was fresh, the sun breaking through gray clouds. Reporters surrounded them again, shouting questions. But Michael ignored them all. He wheeled Emma through the courthouse doors and down the steps, the crowd cheering softly. "Daddy," Emma said, tilting her head back to look at the sky. "It's sunny again." He smiled. "Yeah, it is." In that moment, surrounded by strangers who become supporters, Michael realized something profound. Justice wasn't just about punishment. It was about healing, about showing the world that even the smallest voice could make the loudest difference. As they reached the bottom of the steps, a SWAT officer, one of the same men from that terrible day, approached them. He removed his helmet and smiled gently. "Your daughter's a hero, sir. What she went through, it reminded my whole team why we do what we do." Michael shook his hand. "Thank you. You were there when everything went wrong, and you helped make it right." The officer nodded. "No, sir. She did." They watched as the SWAT van drove off, the last reminder of chaos replaced by peace. For the first time in weeks, Michael felt hope, real hope, and as he pushed Emma's wheelchair down the sidewalk, he knew this wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of something bigger, a voice for those who'd been silent too long. The days after the verdict felt different. For once, Maplewood Heights was quiet. Not the fake kind of quiet that came from Karen's endless enforcement, but a peaceful, healing silence. The white fences still stood, but behind them, people smiled more when they passed each other. Kids played in the park again. The community garden that had once been the scene of tragedy now bloomed brighter than ever, every flower, every color, planted in Emma's name. It was Sunday afternoon. A soft breeze carried the smell of fresh soil as Michael pushed Emma's wheelchair along the garden path. Her little hands rested on her lap, a small yellow daisy tucked behind her ear. "Dad," she said softly, "it's weird. Everyone's being nice now." Michael smiled faintly. Sometimes it takes something terrible for people to remember how to be kind. Emma nodded. "But it shouldn't, right?" No, sweetheart, he said, kneeling beside her. It shouldn't. But you reminded them what kindness really looks like. She smiled, her eyes full of light again. I wasn't brave, Daddy. I was just scared. He shook his head. Bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about standing strong even when you are. They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of children laughing in the distance. Across the street, new volunteers were repainting the community sign. It no longer read HOA property, residents only. Instead, it said, Maplewood Community Garden, everyone welcome. Emma grinned. That's better. Michael looked around the garden, his voice quiet but firm. Yeah, that's how it should have always been. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the rows of houses, Michael stood in front of his phone camera. His hand shook slightly as he hit record. He hadn't planned to make a video, but after what happened, after the news, the messages, the strangers from across the country who'd written letters, he felt like he had to say something. Not just for Emma, but for every family that had ever been silenced by fear or authority. He looked straight into the camera, his voice calm, steady. Hi, everyone. My name's Michael Walker. I'm Emma's dad. A few weeks ago, our lives changed forever. My daughter was hurt by someone who thought rules mattered more than people. But instead of breaking her spirit, that moment showed me something. The world still listens when we stand up for what's right. He paused, his eyes glistening. When the video went viral, I saw two kinds of people, the ones who were angry and the ones who were inspired. And both reactions matter. Because anger tells us something's wrong, but compassion is what helps us fix it. My daughter's alive because people cared, because strangers refused to stay quiet. And I want to thank every one of you who shared, who prayed, who demanded justice. He took a deep breath. But this isn't just about one neighborhood. It's about every place where cruelty hides behind authority, where people forget that rules were made for protection, not control. So, if you're watching this, I'm asking you to do one thing. Stand up when something feels wrong. Speak out, even if your voice shakes, because silence protects the bully, not the victim. He smiled faintly now, the kind of smile that carries both pain and pride. Emma's recovering. She's walking again with therapy, and she wants to share something too. He turned the camera slightly toward his daughter, sitting on the couch, her favorite stuffed bear on her lap. She waved shyly. Hi, everyone. I'm okay now. Thank you for caring about me. And if you ever see someone getting hurt, don't just walk away, okay? Help them. Because even small kindness can make a big change. She giggled softly. And don't let people like Miss Karen tell you you don't belong somewhere. Everyone belongs. Michael leaned in and kissed her forehead. That's my girl. The video faded out on her smile. By the next morning, that clip had reached millions. Hashtags like hashtag Justice for Emma and hashtag Everyone Belongs spread across the internet. But more than that, communities started changing. HOA boards re-examined their rules. Schools held assemblies about empathy and inclusion. Local councils invited Michael to speak about neighborhood accountability. What began as a tragedy became a movement. And through it all, Emma never stopped smiling. One evening, weeks later, as Michael tucked her into bed, she asked, Do you think Miss Karen will change too? He paused, thinking. I hope so. Sometimes, people don't realize how much damage they cause until they lose everything. Emma nodded. Then I hope she learns. Because I don't want to hate her. I just want her to stop hurting people. Michael smiled softly. That's what makes you special, sweetheart. You still believe in good, even after what happened. He turned off the lamp and whispered, Good night, my brave girl. Good night, Daddy, she whispered back. As he closed the door, he glanced once more at her room. Posters of flowers, butterflies, and bright sunlight covering the walls. The same light she carried inside her heart. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet again, truly quiet this time. And above it all, a single star shimmered through the clouds, faint but steady, like hope refusing to fade. Hey, everyone, if you've been with us till this point, thank you. Stories like this remind us how fragile kindness can be and how powerful it becomes when we protect it. So, tell me in the comments below, Which city are you watching from? And what message would you give to someone who's ever been bullied or silenced? And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell because more real, emotional stories like this are coming soon. Stories that show that justice, love, and courage still exist, even in the darkest corners of our neighborhoods. Until next time, stay kind, stay strong, and never stay silent.